Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Lizzie once again. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you guys how I was able to carve the brows of my client and also drop the tools that I used in this video on the screen. So this is called a spoolie. I just used that to brush her brows properly, and then what I'm using right now is my razor that I used to carve her brows. So the first thing that I did was to put her brow into a frame, just have a clean cut underneath the brows, just so that it can be, properly defined and it can look neat. So I carved that area and then just defined it properly by putting it into a frame. As you can see, there is a very clean cut underneath the brow like this. So this is basically going to serve as your sketch. Moving on, I also did the same thing with the top of the brow. I just put that area into a frame by making it have a very clean and a very defined curve. So normally for a brow, we have the front, which is the beginning of the brow, we have the arc, and we also have the end of the brow. So what I did was to use the same spoolie to drag the brows, the hairs on the brow down, and every brow that fell underneath the frame that I initially created underneath the brow, I cut everything off. So keep on dragging and dragging everything down until there are no more excess hairs underneath the frame that you have done. So once you're done with the bottom, you need to make sure that everything is clean and properly done. Next up, I brushed the brows upwards like this, and then for the excess hairs that fell above the frame that I initially created, I carved everything out. I don't know, but I feel like the frame is quite visible. You're definitely going to know as long as you've created the clean cut from the beginning, like you've put everything into a frame. Every hair that falls outside that frame is going to be obvious. You're going to see it. That is going to be like your map, your guide in carving. So you need to be as careful as possible just so that you can get everything accurately. For this tutorial, I actually took my time, and at the end of the day, I got what I wanted. So make sure that you are taking note of every detail. The end of the brow is supposed to be as slim and as thin as possible, while the front of the brow is supposed to be fuller. And then for the arc, you're supposed to like create a curve at the top and underneath the brow. I just hope that you guys understand what I am saying. So at this point, I'm just going to carve underneath the brow, that's the arc, because I want it to have like a more defined curve underneath her brows. So I just went in with the razor again and carved that area properly, and I actually did like it better than the way it was looking initially. So make sure that your curve and your carving is as clean as possible. If there are any unwanted hairs in areas where they are not supposed to be, and by that I mean in the frame that you have done for the bottom of the brow and also for the top of the brow, it has to go. So make sure that you take your time and do everything properly. So at this point, I was just carving and making sure that everything is as neat as possible. And so I had to go back to check again to ensure that everything was in place and everything was good before I went ahead to do the second brow. So guys, for the second brow, I basically went ahead to do the same thing that I did for the first brow. Now it gets a little bit tricky at this point, and you need to be as careful as possible, because it's one thing to carve the first brow and then another thing to carve the second brow and make it look similar with the first brow. So at this point, all I did was, at every step of the way, I kept on comparing this brow with the first brow. So if you know that your arc went in really curved, make sure that the second brow goes in really curved. And then you have to take note of the beginning of the brow, you have to take note of the arc, and you also have to take note of the end of the brow, just so that you can get the exact shape and the exact frame. So all I did was to repeat the same process, and trust me guys, if you repeat the same process, you're definitely going to get it. And make sure that you do not do too much. So what I did was to put the lower part of her brow in a frame. I gave it a very clean cut, and then I did the same thing for the top of the brow. And next up, I went ahead to drag the excess hairs that she has on her brows underneath the frame that I initially created for the bottom brow, which is what I am carving out right now. This is actually the excess. So once you're doing this, make sure that you have a very clean cut. So the essence of putting the brow into a frame is just so that you can have like a sketch, a guideline, and so that when you're carving out the excess hairs on the brows, you do not do too much. So this is it guys, look at how neat it's looking. And then next up, I went ahead to drag the brows upwards, and then the hairs that fell outside the frame of the top of the brow, I carved everything out. So be as careful as possible and make sure that you keep comparing the first brow with the second brow, so that you can get everything properly. So guys, for the lower arc, all I did was to make sure that it was as high as the first brow that I had initially done. So I went in with my razor to make sure that that arc is really high and looks like the first brow that I initially carved. So I kept on carving until I actually did get what I wanted, and everything came out really nice and I loved it. So make sure that you keep on adjusting your brows until they actually do look like sisters. They may not necessarily look like twins, but they need to look like sisters. So this was it guys, this was the finished look, and it came out really cute. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope that it was helpful. If it was, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like and share, and do not also forget to turn on your notification button so that each time I post you get a notification and you'll be the first to know. I'm also going to link some of my previous videos to this one.